everybody else.
Say it.
And I feel guilty because everybody pronounces my name beautifully.
Of course.
Okay, so started. Yeah, you can see the orange.
I put the emphasis in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So when we are ready, you just let me see. So
And what about recording?
it's set it up that way.
You sure?
Yeah, recording.
Okay, brilliant.
can start.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
We can start broadcasting, isn't it?
No, because then they'll hear everything.
People hear that you speak.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
when we are ready.
You don't hit broadcast until 11 o'clock. But what you do want is that they can see that slide.
Yeah, we'll set it up that way. So when they log in, the first thing that they see, the first slide.
Yeah. Oh, so I've got to go. Hey.
Yeah, look, he's
So
still on.
I'm still on the old
He's
one, aren't
finished.
I? So I've got to go to the. How do I get to the new one?
You need to get
Oh, I know. That's the email that was sent to me
Yeah.
earlier.
Yes, yeah, the first one. Yeah. So, okay, polls. Okay, so if you click on polls, poll number 1. Okay,
the polls Mark is doing.
I'm showing it to you as well, so you're confident in it. Okay. So, what does it say?
So I don't have the slide yet. I've still got the.
Yeah, because it's not there yet. Okay.
Okay.
So, just going back. Okay, we have the polls, and we will have 3.
Yeah.
Poll number 1, what's stopping you? Okay.
Yeah.
Poll number 2, would you consider outsourcing and contact? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will come once one is closed, the next one will come. If not, then you can select it from there. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is the changed one. Yeah.
You saved it. Obviously, you saved it. So.
So what we will do is just from here share this one, share, and
Full screen.
okay.
Take the arrow off the middle of the screen.
You need to click on broadcast, isn't it?
At 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Not broadcasting. Let me see. Oh, from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just click on broadcast.
Yeah. Once you click on it, it will go. Okay. So, and make sure you don't leave something like this there. Okay?
Yeah.
And your emails are off, yeah?
Yeah.
Can you just email
feedback
him,
from
see if
Kevin.
it shows up, because hers was off.
Yeah.
They were still
Oh,
showing
it's
there.
got some dodgy settings.
Bizarrely, I'm on screen. I'm on slide 2. Why am I on slide 2 when you're showing slide 1?
Right. Eileen's testing.
You want to go up, but you can't. Oh,
I can't
you
control. I'm
move
not
it.
controlling it. So
What are they seeing? Oh, they are.
They're not on it yet.
Can you ask them to come on, isn't it?
No, because we're not broadcasting. Nobody will see it.
I can see that.
But you're a host, aren't you?
I don't know that I am at the moment
No,
on
you're
this
not a
one.
host.
I'm not
You
on
see
this
it
one.
moving.
No,
Can you move it? No?
no, I can't do anything.
Maybe when it starts broadcasting.
Yeah, but
Let
how's
me
it
log
got
in.
this screen?
Let me log in as a panelist, because I'm a panelist in there. Yeah?
Well, that's weird. View options.
Can we just check that is the latest one?
You're viewing Aaron's screen. Oh, I'm not viewing Aaron's screen. I think you must have. It says recording. On slide 2 of 24. How weird.
Remind me.
Oh, you're getting it properly.
Really?
Isn't
Ah, okay. Now I'm back to slide 1.
So that's slow
it?
then.
You-
Okay, move it on to.
It's slow.
What can I do?
Ah, okay. No, it's
So
they're-
you
they're-
can
For
cut
a
on my-
second.
There
If
is-
you're on Wi-Fi, that's fine.
okay. I'll give you that.
The reason is if they use the software, then they can do this also.
So you might want to take control of my laptop then. No?
We don't have
I'll,
That's what you mean.
But just
I-
expect that. Give people a couple of seconds.
I will.
in
I will.
case.
I will mention that. 2-second delay. Questions.
I mean, all attendees should be on mute mode, right?
yes.
Yeah.
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 Because you've got the microphone.
I still have the microphone. Can we go and speak?
No, you speak, right?
You for mine. panelists.
You're very fortunate.
Hello?
A qualified,
Hello?
An energetically.
energetic team,
Yeah,
Passionate.
we give them Red Bull every morning.
passionate team, enthusiastic. Enthusiastic. That was the word I
No,
was.
couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Enthusiastic was the word I was looking for.
They should be on mute.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
just in case. So just in case if you can hear something, but
Yeah.
you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Shall I take this? You done this?
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Participants, okay?
Well. That's I didn't see where you were.
So you again
Yeah.
go up. Okay?
Yeah.
You have participants.
Yeah.
With 3 because it's us 3. I muted all. It's
Yeah.
just Aaron. And then click attendees, and then you'll have mute all.
Yeah.
Okay. It should
Click on
be.
attendees.
No, nobody's there.
Yeah. Is there one? This is Zoom, isn't it? Is there the facility to get people to put their hands up or
Yes,
something?
there is raise hand.
So where's that?
Go raise your hand.
No.
There is. You can see it somewhere.
Not convinced. Oh, I see. Raise hand. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see? Yeah, Mark Lee raised hand. Look. Can you see it on your screen?
Yeah.
It's here. No.
Yeah.
Wait, look.
Yeah.
It was there. It came up there, but you couldn't see it here.
No.
So
Oh, that's
fine.
good. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah,
do it
so when
again.
you ask people, I don't know, to interact, you see, it's there.
Excellent. Good. Okay.
I
So
can't
we-
raise hand because
That's fine.
I'm not a attendee.
You're not
I'm not
That's
watching.
okay.
Sure.
That's okay. That's okay. I now know.
8 minutes to go, yeah. This is your water. Can you bring some more for him, please?
If we leave it around this way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you can-
I'll do what I can.
Okay, and again, broadcasting from there, okay?
Yeah.
And then just comment on.
Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. What am I doing
Have
here?
a seat?
You want to
Yeah.
shut it down?
Yeah, I'll leave it for more because still 8 more minutes to go, okay?
Mhm.
Uh,
You're not able to see panel
I am.
list of attendees from yours.
I am.
Have a quick look.
They're not there yet.
Not there yet.
No, but the people who have signed up.
We don't know. The majority, I think, is from your list.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Good.
we just have a few,
Of our own.
but just a few. I
Who
mean,
was it?
LSD, Peter Herta, that's
Peter,
DH accounts. The
I don't know a lot. When I say I don't know a lot of my
Well, he-
people, I got
yeah.
thousands. And yeah, different people respond to different things.
Shabazz. So we have
Oh,
around
Shabazz.
10.
Of
10-ish.
our-
Yeah. Okay. 7 minutes to go.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mark.
Mark,
You
you're
have
okay, yeah?
yeah.
I've got one. Thank you.
Should I take this away? Is it okay for you here? Yeah.
No, it's fine.
All right, trial and error.
We'll get there.
Look, what's a big deal?
The worst. The
I
worst.
can hear you. So in case you need me, just call me
Okay.
when there's,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, the worst that will happen is we crash out of it, and everybody is so disappointed they start a campaign and a petition to have global emphasis banned from the UK
No.
marketplace.
What
Now,
is that?
my best guess is that's not going to happen.
Because they've got a lot more of the
Yeah.
e.g. Brexit.
If a webinar crashes
Yeah.
somewhere in the and I'm embarrassed.
So with
Those are the worst
questions,
things that
yeah,
can happen.
With the questions,
Yeah.
if I believe it's interesting, I'll leave it there for you.
Yeah.
And then you can see the answered one so you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about them. Okay?
Have we checked that I'm in the same status here as I was on the trial one?
Yeah, you're panelist.
Okay. Yes, of course I am.
You
Yes.
are.
Yes.
You are.
Oh, goody.
Okay, good.
All right, we'll leave you guys.
I get hyped up.
Put in the hard work and
Now, Mike.
we've given Mark the tablets on
That's later.
Now, my watch says, so I have to remember that my watch is 2 minutes fast because it's 5 to 10. now.
Aaron's office. Aaron's screen says what? 10:50.
55.
Yeah, mine says 10:50. So I've got to remember this is 2
Yes,
minutes fast.
fine.
Yeah, that's right. My watch is fast.
I'm going to want to change that watch time to show 10:55 instead of 9:55.
What time?
The clock on the wall like that.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, why is the other one 7.5 or
India.
four,
India.
4.5 hours difference?
Yeah.
There's a half-hour difference.
Yeah, 4.5.
I thought everything was on the hour.
No, it's just No,
I'm astonished. I
because,
had
because it's such a big
country.
country.
Yeah.
They give half an hour as well. But for example, in our country, it's half an hour difference, but they just take it as an hour. So 8 o'clock is 8 o'clock everywhere. But because it's
Oh
such a
wow!
big
I
distance,
had no idea.
Yeah.
I have learned something today. I've learned something today.
So if it's 10 o'clock over there, it's 4:30.
Yes,
Yes.
Pre-K.
So
But they
my
don't-
question in looking at the summertime clock, that had, the
No,
clock,
India time is the right time. It's only the summer clock which
Yeah,
has to
that's-
needs to change to
yeah.
they don't
Summer.
change. time.
PST.
Okay,
All
nice.
right. See you.
Good luck.
What did
Thank you very much.
You're on your own, yeah? See ya.
La 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 la. What a handsome young man your brother is. Oh, it's you. Sorry.
You mean your brother?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should say that. I told my wife I was going to get some new photos done because those are in May. They'll be 3 years old.
Right.
And she said, "But this still looks like you." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "You love me, and you don't notice that I've grown." Yeah. I tease people for having profile photos of their younger siblings, and I know them.
Actually,
But
that's quite a young photo of yours.
Yeah.
Or was it?
well, no, I'm saying it's almost 3 years old, and I know.
Mm-hmm.
And people who work with me don't see me every day can
Yeah.
see that I'm older than that.
Just notice something else. You should be speaker and mentor should be end caps in there.
Oh, should be. Yes, let's not worry about that now. That was me, because I put those on there originally. I started trying to do the slide. I'm conscious. I started trying to do the slides, adapting them from the previous one with 2020 and Heather, and taking bits from 2 or 3 different ones, and
But I
using
think the format is
using your new
logo.
20th logo. And I got halfway through and thought, this is taking far too much time.
Yeah.
So I gave it to Maz, and she seems fine with it. I think she's done a really good job.
I think they've learned from this. So,
Yeah.
okay, this was the first time we independently did this.
Yeah.
Usually it's someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can take things so far, but yeah, and they've got more design skills than me.
Mm.
And it's better that you choose the graphics that you use as well.
I can't hear you guys, probably because I'm a panelist, no?
I don't know.
It says not broadcasting.
Okay. Okay.
It does say. It's because we shared it. Stop share. We were sharing it.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, just because she's a panelist.
Mm.
Well, I don't think it does any harm. Let's have a look.
There we go. Start.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just click.
Yeah, and I'll talk. Good morning to anybody who has arrived early. And welcome to this webinar with Global Emphasis. I'm Mark Lee. I'm going to introduce things properly at 11 o'clock, but I thought I'd say thank you for arriving early and welcome. So give it just a minute or two and we'll be ready to start. Lovely to see so many people already here in good time, and the numbers are going up quite a lot, and there's names I recognise there and names I don't recognise as well. Lovely to have so many of you here. From all over the country, it would seem, as well. That's fabulous. How wonderful. Welcome, David, Darren, Carol, Alex, Elaine, Lorraine. Hi, Lorraine. Matthew, Mikesh, Ruth, Sam. Wow, numbers just going on and on. I won't say hello to everybody. Forgive me if you've just joined and I didn't name you personally. We're just waiting for 11 o'clock, dead on, and then we will start. And then we will start. So just another moment or two, and it'll be 11 o'clock, and we will start promptly. And then a few people will join over the next few minutes, and they'll miss my bright and breezy introduction. But those of you, 11 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. My name's Mark Lee. I'm delighted to welcome you to this Global Emphasis 20th anniversary webinar on how do I become more efficient in 2019. I'm a chartered accountant, speaker, mentor, author, working with accountants across the UK. And indeed, many of you on this webinar today are people that I've engaged with previously. And there's some people here who are new to me as well. I'm joined by the Chief Exec of Global Infosys, Aaron.
Good morning, folks. Thanks for joining in.
And we are going to run this webinar in largely two parts. What we have coming up is coming up on the screen any second now. And we can show you we'd like to show you what's coming up on the screen now. There we go. And there's a couple of seconds delay if you're on Wi-Fi, I think you'll find. But in this webinar, you're going to learn what's stopping you and your firm from becoming more efficient. What can your firm do to become more efficient? I'll reference how other accountants are dealing with MTD. Obviously, we're going to talk about how outsourcing can assist with efficiency. And then Aaron in particular will talk about the different outsourcing models and options available at Global Infosys. And we have 2 or 3 polls that we're going to post along the way. Before we do that, whilst we wait for 1 or 2 other people to log on or to find their way into this Zoom webinar, I'm going to ask you, if you've worked out how to do it, to raise your hands, obviously not physically, but on the Zoom webinar. There we go. Matthew was first. We've had two participants raising their hands already. If you're not sure how to do it, if you look at if you move your the pointer on your screen to the bottom of the screen, you should get a little box which pops up participants, and if you do that, you can then click the raise hand. And okay, over half of you have already done that. That's fantastic. So you can put your hands down again now if you can see the thing to do that, and the numbers are dropping down. Great. So you know how to do that, and when you did that, you will also have seen a facility to ask questions and answers. If you want to post questions as we go, if you put them in there, and one of our assistants will have a look at those questions and answer those that they can, and any that they can't answer on our behalf should come through to me, and we'll look to answer them as we go as well. If for any reason we don't get to answer your question during the webinar, then we'll look to answer it afterwards on a one-to-one basis. Right, so hopefully everybody who's coming is now there. If you missed the very beginning, I'm Mark Lee. I'm your host on this webinar with Global Infosys, talking about becoming more efficient in 2019, and joined by Aaron, the Chief Exec at Global Infosys. Let's start by asking that key question: what's stopping you from becoming more efficient? And before I tell you what I think the answer is, let's run a poll and ask you to tell us. You're going to see a little box will pop up on your screen there. What do you think is stopping you from becoming more efficient? We're giving you 5 answers there. Could be anything that you like. And we're getting some great responses there. We'll just leave this up for a moment or two. We can't see who is answering, by the way, so your answers are anonymous. And we're getting a good spread of replies here. We'll keep it going for just a few seconds longer. And what do you think is stopping you from becoming more efficient? And still moving, and there we go. Okay, we will stop the polling there. Well, that's great. Over 70% of you on the webinar have responded, and about 28% have said that. There we go. So we'll share the results with you. Yep. And just give it a second, and you can see that's popped up a box in the middle of your screen. What do you think is stopping you from being more efficient? As you can see, 28% of you say competing demands, 22% confused priorities. That's very common indeed. Knowing where to start, 22%. Procrastination, that's very honest. That's almost half. And necessary resources, 28% as well. And I would say that those answers are pretty similar to normal. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And I appreciate you couldn't see you couldn't necessarily see those answers, but if you want more details on them, we can share them with you afterwards as well. Thank you, Sam, for pointing that out. So these are the answers that I received last time I asked the question, and not a huge difference there. But I thought let's address these four main reasons. Competing demands, what's stopping you from being more efficient? It's very common, isn't it, amongst accountants? There's always so much to be done. We prioritize client work over anything else. We know we're going to get paid, well, at least we hope we're going to get paid for client work. So we prioritize doing that. And thinking about making changes to the way that we run our practice, well, that's a challenging issue. So we just get on and do the client work that we need to do. And if you manage to overcome that challenge already, good for you, well done. Confused priorities, well, again, very common. There's so much that needs doing. We focus on what we think is the most urgent work rather than necessarily what's most important. And quite often we find that we are doing things because other people want them done now. They have the noise of importance or noise of urgency, but they may not really be important. It may be something that we can put off to a later date. Recognizing the difference between what is urgent and what's important, doing some of the important stuff even when it's not urgent, is a crucial part of becoming more efficient. And identifying what needs doing and then distinguishing it and allocating time to do it is really important. We'll come back to that in a moment. Knowing where to start is the other big challenge. There's always so much to be done. How do we start becoming more efficient? What is it we need to do? And we all know the old adage, where should we start? Well, let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. And identifying what is the very first thing you need to do to make changes. Just making 5 minutes to think about that in any context in your practice can make a huge difference to whether or not you then get on and start making changes, because it's really knowing where to start. So just making time to think about where will I start can be really helpful. And then procrastination, how do we deal with that? We're constantly putting things off, challenges and difficult. There's so much else we want to do. So in a couple of moments, we will talk about that. What is it you and your firm can do to become more efficient? So let's move on to that. And then we will talk, as I said before, about how other accountants are dealing with MTD, and we'll look at how outsourcing can assist with efficiency as well. We'll get to that in a moment. So what can your firm do? Here are four key tips for you. The first one is effective prioritization, making sure you get that distinction between getting right, that distinction between what's urgent and what's important, not leaving the important things until they are urgent. One important thing to do is to plan strategy for your firm, plan how you're going to manage your workload, and focus on doing the right things for your firm at the right time. And one of the best tips there that I share with the accountants that I work with when I'm mentoring them or when they come to my roundtable groups in London is, before you leave the office at night, identify the top 3 things you really must do the following day. If you do that before you leave the office, by the way, it'll help you sleep better as well, because you won't be worried about trying to remember them the following day, because you'll know that you've already written them down and they're on a note on your desk waiting for you when you come in. So you don't have to go home thinking about all this stuff you've got to do tomorrow. You've already done that quick brain dump. And those 3 things that you need to do the following day, the 3 things you need to complete the following day, not big elephant-sized tasks, but break the big tasks, chunk them down into small bite-sized chunks. By the way, that's one of the great time management tips on how to deal with a big task that's the size of an elephant. How would you eat an elephant if you did eat meat, which I don't? Then break it down into bite-sized chunks and then you could then get through it. As I say, I don't eat meat anymore, so that's not going to work for me. But what you're going to do, your list of 3 points, it might be 3 elements of a big task, or it might be 3 different things. Prioritize, and what's the first one of those 3 that you're going to need to do the following day? And when you come in the following day, when you start work, whether you're coming into your office at home or elsewhere, do the first thing that's on the list before you open your emails, before you start dealing with anything which has the noise of urgency, but which might not really be urgent. If you spend an hour on that first task before you start looking at your emails, you will be more efficient. You will get that task done. Then before you do the second of the 3 tasks, you might then look at your emails or any messages that you've received and decide, has anything else that's come in, is it as important or more important than the second task that I'd set myself on the list? And then you do the same thing before you do the third task on your list. If you leave the office and you haven't done all 3 of those things, then the tasks you set for yourself for that day were too big. Break them down, and the following day do the same thing again. One accountant I was mentoring a few years ago, we agreed that each night he would send me the 3 items on his list that he needed to get done the next day. And he did that for, I can't remember if it was 2 weeks or a month, but by the second or third time that I spoke to him during the mentoring program, he said, you know what, I've now got into the habit. I'm now doing it every night. I don't need to send them to you because I am committed to it. It's a habit I have developed. I now do it every night. And by the way, I am getting through so much more work. I am so much more efficient. Focusing on the right things for you and your firm. Third way of becoming more efficient is having the right people doing the right work. And sometimes, if you're a sole practitioner working by yourself, that's a challenge because there is only you. Now, a number of accountants will work with virtual assistants. They might have contractors who come in 1 or 2 days a week. They might work with people who come into their office 1 or 2 days a week, maybe doing bookkeeping work, or they work with independent bookkeepers. But having a flexible workforce and recognizing you don't have to do everything yourself. Now, I find it absolutely bizarre. I mentioned before, I'm a qualified chartered accountant myself. When I think back, why did I become an accountant? And when I ask other accountants, why did they qualify, train and qualify as accountants? Nobody ever tells me that they wanted to become an accountant so that they could collate paperwork to prepare, do the bookkeeping, to prepare sets of accounts, and to complete tax computations. That's not why anybody chose to become an accountant. And yet, so many accountants spend the bulk of their time doing that. Because that's the way, when they started their own practice, they were doing a lot of it themselves. They haven't got anybody else to do it. And maybe a bit like me, you don't want to employ anybody, or you don't want to employ anybody else, or you don't know where you're going to find the sort of people, the right sort of people who can do the work to the level you need it done and be as reliable as you need. A lot of the accountants I've spoken with and worked with over the years have somehow managed to find people they can work with. Maybe they've used an online resource to find people, or they've asked friends, or they find somebody they used to work with here, there, or wherever. But it's challenging and it's time consuming. But if you can do it, that's great. Obviously, in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about outsourcing as a possibility. But I just want to stress, some people forget that outsourcing really means having people doing the work who are not in your office or not on your payroll. So if you already use a virtual assistant, if you already use an independent bookkeeper, if you already use a contractor who's not on your payroll, you are outsourcing. It's just who you choose to outsource to that is the decision that you're making. And we'll come back to that when we move on to outsourcing with global emphasis. But obviously it's 2019 when we're recording this webinar. So we need to talk about MTD and how other accountants are dealing with making tax digital. It's live now. The first VAT returns are going to be filed in a few months' time under MTD. But as I'm sure you're aware, MTD is not just about how you file the VAT returns for clients who are over the VAT registration threshold. And it's also about the obligation, which came into force at the beginning of April 2019, for those clients to maintain their records in an acceptable digital format. Now, hopefully, if you're on this webinar, you are aware of this already and you've talked to clients about it. I know some accountants haven't spent much time with clients, but what they are doing is offering clients the options. Either telling clients what they need to do, because the accountant doesn't want to do it, it's a hands-off operation. You Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, Ms. Client, a client, keep that as gender neutral as I can. Either you will do everything, file your VAT returns as you did previously, but having registered to do that correctly through the Revenue's new portal, and then the accountant, will produce your accounts, file your tax returns as we did previously. Or maybe you don't want to pay any extra, so you client will do everything that's required under MTD, but it's a hassle, but you can do it if you want to. Aaron, you got something here?
Yeah, and I think it is also needs a lot of discipline because it's real-time accounting, and there are all the softwares and gadgets available out there. It's down to if the client is your end client is using it or not, and it needs a bit of educating the client to use the online cloud and the digital document gathering system, and it takes time to educate the client. So I think education is a big part of this whole transition into MTD.
Absolutely right. Thank you for that. The second possibility is where you allow the client to use their own choice of software. Maybe you recommend your preferred software, be it Xero, be it QuickBooks, be it Free Agent, be it Zoho, be it whatever you like, if you have a preference. But then you offer to check their records and make any necessary amendments, and then you file the VAT returns on their behalf.
A bit like a health check service or a top and tail job, which is commonly called, where you give the clients the responsibility to do the basic bookkeeping, and you just sense check it at the end of the quarter or end of every month, depending on what the requirements are.
Absolutely. Third possibility is encouraging them to use your preferred cloud software. And by the way, conversation I have with a lot of accountants, many have their own preferred software.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds, maybe thousands of accountants across the UK who have reached the conclusion that they will only take on new clients who use their preferred software solution, because if you're running a small practice, you're not realistically going to be able to get to grips, fully understand, and be able to help clients deal with all of their bookkeeping issues across a multitude of different bookkeeping software platforms.
So obviously this is where the discipline comes in. So you choose your preferred software and make sure your clients follows your way of working.
Absolutely. And the other advantage of that approach, and it's one of the reasons why so many accountants are doing this, is because cloud bookkeeping and the adoption of cloud bookkeeping software is not just about the bookkeeping that you do with the software. It's about all of the apps, add-ons, and extensions that work with that software, and helping clients identify the right apps, add-ons, and extensions that will simplify their processes beyond bookkeeping, that will integrate with their bookkeeping, and that will enable them to be more efficient and effective in running their business, and will produce more valuable financial information, which may help you deliver more valuable advice to the clients going forwards. Fantastic facilities here, but realistically, if you're running a small practice, it's very challenging to be fully au fait with how all of the different apps, add-ons and extensions work across a multitude of cloud software bookkeeping platforms.
We also need to know that a lot of you will have to initially invest a lot of your time educating the client, because you will then see the benefits of this whole cloud accounting bit over a period of time. So obviously in the first 3-4 months it'll be quite a bit painful exercise in the first 3 months, but that is the commitment that's the time commitment you have to make to educate your client. Because if you don't educate your client, I've got a lot of clients who for whom it's a bit of a struggle, because in spite of educating the client, they don't really do what you ask them to do. So I think there has to be a bit of discipline, and you need to be a bit more firmer with your clients.
Oh, very, very much so. The fourth option there, offering a done-for-you service, is making the clients aware, as Aaron's just said, of the new obligations, and these are additional obligations. I'm very saddened when I hear accountants telling me that they can't ask their clients to pay more for their service because clients can't afford to pay more. And the accountant, therefore, is going to give away a load of extra time to comply with all the additional obligations that are imposed by MTD without charging an appropriate fee for doing that for clients. And that's one of the reasons why I set out the 4 options on this slide, because you need to give your clients the option. There are 4 ways in which they can comply with the new obligations. These are new legal obligations. Somebody has to do the extra work. If the client can't afford to do it themselves, they're going to have to pay you or somebody else to do it for them.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what happened with auto enrollment, isn't it? I mean, people said, "Oh, who is going to pay for it?" But obviously, it's not. It's a legislation, and legislation requires you to do something, and someone has to pay for it. So obviously, the client will have to pay for that, and it's now accepted that with auto enrollment, it's been a while now, is people are paying for that extra bit to run their payrolls.
Yeah, and if the client doesn't want to pay extra for it, then they're going to have to do it themselves, or they'll have to find another accountant who will allow them to do it more cheaply. And realistically, if you have clients who can't afford to pay you a commercial fee for the work that you do, you have a choice. You can earn less money from those clients and give away more time, effort, and value to them, because you're scared of the difficulties and challenges of finding new clients to replace them. Or you can follow the route that many other accountants follow, which is to say, well, maybe we can find a cheaper way instead of employing more staff or having expensive staff doing it. Maybe we can find a cheaper way of resourcing the work. That's fine if you have a payroll. If you don't have a payroll and it's just you or largely you, then do you really want to be giving away more of your time and not earning anything for it? You might decide, depending upon where you are in the development of your practice, you might decide that you would rather do that and earn less from those clients than go out and try and find new clients to replace them. But I would just encourage you to consider, why are you running your practice, and to be clear as to whether or not the work that you're doing is what you find fulfilling and satisfying and rewarding. And is the bookkeeping and the additional work required under MTD what you really want to be doing with your time? Or would you like to find a more effective way of doing that work so that you can spend time developing the skills, if necessary, in order to do the more interesting work that you probably went into accountancy to do in the first place? But it's your choice. So it's not going to surprise you that we're now going to move on to looking at how outsourcing can assist with efficiency. And in this context, I'd like to suggest that there are at least four reasons to think about why outsourcing might help you to be more efficient. I'm finding an increasing number of firms are exploring the outsourcing option. And the more I talk with accountants about this, the longer that my list becomes of reasons for outsourcing to a reputable outsourcing company. And clearly, we're on this webinar today with just such a company. Now, obviously, there are occasions when you think you need more people in the office, but it isn't always the case. It's simply the approach that we adopted in the past. And I recently went on record to say that if I was starting an accountancy practice today, I'd look to adopt an outsourcing model from the outset. I thought it might be helpful to share why I find that concept so attractive. First of all, there are no recruitment headaches. If you already have staff, then you know what a pain it can be trying to find the right person. And if you don't have any staff, you may be deliberately avoiding having to run a payroll and open yourself up to all the obligations imposed by employment legislation. And certainly that's the case with me. I work by myself. When accountants talk to me about mentoring or joining my roundtable group, they're dealing with me. I don't want employees. I have a virtual assistant who helps to a degree, but really it is just me. I just don't want the recruitment headaches and the employment headaches. Outsourcing means you only need to talk to the outsourcing company instead of to recruiters and to prospective employees. You don't need to spec out a specific role or try to find that ideal candidate. You don't need to sift through CVs, make time for interviews, make job offers, reject people, wait to find out if your job offers have been accepted, negotiate salaries, rises or promotions. You also don't have to spend time inducting new recruits, nor do you have to bear the cost of paying staff to rectify the mistakes they make. And that one, I think, is really key. As you'll hear in a moment, Global Emphasis will sort things out if they make mistakes, and you don't pay any extra. That's so different to having an employee who you've paid to do the work wrong in the first place, and then you've got to pay them again to get it right. Who would choose to operate on that basis? Well, you may feel that there are advantages and benefits that warrant that approach, but to me, it's just one of the recruitment and employment headaches that I'm happy to avoid. As are many of the accountants I know who like the outsourcing model. It's time saving and cost effective. Outsourcing means there's no recruitment fees. There's no need to provide a desk, no indirect employment costs, no holiday pay, no employment law obligations, and no employer's national insurance contributions. You'll also find there are significant savings in the costs of performing the jobs that you pass to an outsourcing company. When the work's being done on the other side of the world, you can achieve faster turnaround times because the outsourcers can be working while you sleep.
Yeah.
And so clearly that gives you greater flexibility as well. And it'll free you up and maybe staff up for more interesting work. The more compliance-focused activities you outsource, the more you can focus your own time on client development, building up your practice and delivering valuable advice to clients. As I said before, I know I went into accountancy with the intention of doing those things rather than sitting around preparing accounts and tax returns. The less compliance work you have to do yourself, the more you can focus on providing the services you enjoy. Now, just before I pass over to Aaron to go through a case study and then talk some more about how Global Emphasis operate, I thought I'd just reference, and I sometimes come across accountants who tell me they've tried outsourcing and it didn't work for them. Well, that's a bit like saying we've tried recruiting staff and it didn't work for us. Despite repeated recruitment errors, employers continue the search for the ideal candidate. There are many reasons things don't always work out as you'd hope. You can give up, or you can look to learn from your past experience and do things differently next time. Sometimes the problems are as much due to over-optimism, poor communication as to what you need, or not choosing who you engage with sufficient care. Global Emphasis, as you'll hear in a moment, have a well-established process to ensure that they address those types of issues over the initial period that accountants choose to work with them. And you'll hear more on that in a moment. But let's now pass over to Aaron and we'll go through this great case study.
I think before we start the case study, I think one of the bigger issues I find with all the potential new clients, which are quite a few of them coming through the door, is the unknown, because a lot of people have not tried outsourcing. They don't know how it works. And it's a question of, would you get married after your first date? Maybe not, but I got married after my first date. That's a different matter. But it's the unknown. You don't know how the relationship is going to go. You don't know how it's going to pan out. And that this is exactly where the first case study is, that we had a client last year who was very reluctant to outsource, but all of a sudden he had about, over a period of time, about 6 members of staff leaving. And there's a huge backlog now in this whole process. What's happening is the end client is suffering, and you don't want your reputation to be under risk. So they had a backlog of about 20 files, and the client had nothing to lose but to give us those 20 files and see what comes back. And today, after he has done all the trials with us, and this year he's looking to scale up with us, because now he knows that he can scale up the work without having staff in his premises. And to be honest with you, you don't need staff sitting in your offices doing the work. You could have staff sitting anywhere, so long the work gets done to the right quality. It shouldn't really matter, because your job is to make sure what comes back is to standard. Make sure you spend few hours reviewing it, and off it goes to the client, which means that you have got more time, as Mark has rightly said. You have got more time on your hand to provide higher end services to your client, because you don't want your high end resources in-house to be spending time doing processing and preparing set of accounts when they can do more important stuff for you.
And just to add a point there, quite often accountants will say to me that none of our clients want high-end services or want advice, and that may be true to an extent. I always question the use of the word none. I mean, it's certainly possible if you have a particular type of client base, and they are all very simple, very straightforward. People who, contractors, I suppose, who are pretty fully occupied, and there's a limit as to how much tax advice you can give them. There's a limit as to what advice you can give them on a business perspective that they will pay for. But if that's the client base you have, and none of them want any high-end advice or would ever be willing to pay you for valuable advice, then yes, maybe you want to go out and find the type of clients who will pay you to do the stuff that you enjoy doing. Because those accountants who do have clients who want advice tend to find it a bit more stimulating and enjoy the work more than those that are focused on doing the compliance paperwork themselves.
Yeah, but also at the same time, because as a byproduct of this whole outsourcing concept, which also offers cost saving and that time could be invested by the remaining in-house team with the clients, because I'm sure they will refer you someone else, or you could do some advisory work for them, which otherwise you would not do, because a lot of accountants still are timesheet driven, isn't it, Mark?
Oh, yeah, far too many in my experience, whether they're in larger firms or smaller firms. And I'm embarrassed to admit that when I was in practice, and I was in practice for 25 years across a variety of firms, small and large. The largest was BDO. I was a partner in the London office. And I am embarrassed to admit that almost throughout the time I was in practice, I bought into the idea that we were selling our time. And since 2006, when I went freelance, became a speaker, mentor and author for accountants, I've realized no client is buying an accountant's time. They're buying an accountant's solutions to their problems, to their challenges. They are buying the outcomes that you produce for them.
I think the other thing also need to be factored in is that I think there was a recent survey, Mark, on this, wasn't it? The amount of profit available for the partners to take away is, I think there's a lot of strain on that figure, because obviously the cost of running the operation has gone up. Staffing is becoming a serious issue in the accountancy world, and they have to find innovative ways, which is automation is one of it. But if you can combine that with outsourcing, I think it's a deadly combination to have.
I think it's a fantastic combination. I'm sure you meant deadly in a positive.
Yeah, of course.
And when I was in practice, the traditional model, employment model, was a third. I'm sure many of the people on this webinar will recognize that we grew up thinking that salary costs should be about a third of the charge out rate, another third was for overheads, and the final third was for profit. The last firm I worked in was on a 50-25-25 model. They recognized that employment costs were higher as a percentage of charge out rates. Overheads were lower because, of course, we had fewer secretaries per employed person. And that also meant that the profit available for the partners was lower, down to 25% as well. I tend to think that's a more modern model and much more common model these days. But of course, if you can reduce the cost of the staff or the people doing the work, the resources doing the work, there is more profit available for the owners, for the partners. Now, you don't want to reduce the costs and reduce the quality of the work or what's being produced, which is why I referenced before the necessity of choosing a quality outsourcing facility, which is clearly why we're here today. And by the way, just if you're not aware, we are in England today. I'm sitting in the headquarters of Global Emphasis in Harrow in northwest London, which is where they are based, although the detailed work is outsourced to India. But the accountants who deal with Global Emphasis are dealing with Global Emphasis, dealing with managers, account managers based in London.
I think one of the important statistics from this case study point of view, and we'll get back into that. In the last 1 year, obviously we have seen a significant increase in the number of inquiries we are having, and the marketing team confirms that last year we had about 400 inquiries about outsourcing, and a significant number of them are converting this year, because obviously accountants like to try it out, and they are slow starters. So they start with the pay-as-you-go model. We'll go through some of those fixed pricing models in a while, but they start small, see how it goes, and once they've got the experience, they move on. Now, in the last year, just from the statistics point of view, we had 30 referrals from existing clients, and this particular client, which is on this case study, actually recommended us 2 more clients.
When you say more clients, to other accountants?
To other accountants, to
Fantastic.
us.
Well, let's just ask a poll question here now. Would you consider outsourcing to improve efficiency? We're going to try and ask the right poll question. There we go. I'm asking the wrong question there, so I'm going to ask the right question this time. Here we go. Would you consider outsourcing? And now I've launched it, and now it'll pop up on your screen. There we go. Would you consider outsourcing to improve efficiency? If you'd like to vote, please, as you are doing, that's great. I think I'd be disappointed if you were on this webinar and you said no, but it's perfectly feasible, and you might have good reasons for doing it. Some of those reasons experience suggests don't always stand up to forensic examination. There's just a generic feeling. I know a post I put on LinkedIn in the last week. I referenced outsourcing, and one accountant said, "I would never outsource." And then I went back and asked him. It was an older gentleman, and I went back and asked him, "Does that mean he does everything himself, or does he use contractors or bookkeepers or whatever?" And yes, he does use contractors and bookkeepers.
I had the same as well. There was one particular client of mine who initially said he was never going to outsource, and I think from memory, in the last 4 or 5 years, he has actually recommended 5 other firms of accountants doing it. So obviously the goalpost has changed for him.
So we have the results now, which I'm going to attempt to share with you, but I have to. Hopefully you can see that, but if you can't, the answer was 43% said yes, they would consider outsourcing, 10% said that they wouldn't, 43% said maybe, so that's like half and half, and one or two people hadn't yet thought about it. So that's a nice split. We have had the inevitable question that Aaron predicted when Aaron and I were talking beforehand about questions that might come through. He said, there's one question that always comes up when we talk about outsourcing. So Ruth's asked, has asked that question. So thank you, Ruth. Without any prompting at all, you have asked the question that Aaron told me beforehand somebody would ask, because they always do. I'll reference that just before we get back to the slides, and then Aaron, if you can answer it. Okay. The question is, what are the GDPR implications of sending sensitive client information overseas?
Yeah, we have had this question before. We have had GDPR consultants who we have hired to overall look about the whole disclosure requirements around GDPR. Now, from what I gather is GDPR doesn't necessarily say that you cannot send data out to India, but we do not send data out to India technically, because the work is done on UK servers. So the work gets done on your servers or on the cloud or on our servers. If you don't have that kind of a setup, it could be done on our servers. So the data physically never goes out of the UK servers, because we have got team at the back office which has got they've got dual screens, so they need to copy paste any of the information. They can do all the processing and get the output delivered on your servers or send it out to you through our secure portals. So that effectively covers. However, what you need to do is, I think there are standard templates available with the institute. I think you need to do mention it in your service level contracts with your client that you do have the option of outsourcing or subcontracting the work.
That's right. The real obligation here is in your letter of engagement with clients, in your terms and conditions. Maybe you put them on your website, maybe they're in the letters of engagement that you send out. You need to make clients aware that their data doesn't stay in your office, and that it's no different to whether it's going to India, anywhere overseas, or to a bookkeeper down the road.
Yeah.
Once it's outside of your office control, you need to have your client's permission to do that, and you can do that generically as part of the. I know accountants who say sometimes we find it necessary to share your data with other trusted providers. The obligation on you as the accountant is then to ensure that whoever you pass the data to, whether it's a friendly bookkeeper down the road, whether it's a contractor, whether it's another accountant, or whether it's Global Emphasis or any other outsourcer, that they confirm to you that all of their processes are GDPR compliant, as indeed Aaron's now going to do.
So number one is that the work should be done on your servers or on cloud or on a UK server. Number one, and number two, we are regularly audited which is our back office in India are audited, and so we are an ISO 9001 certified business and ISO 27001 certified business. And I think some of the controls we have put at the back office, things like you cannot take your mobile phones into the floor. There is a fingerprint system to get into the offices, so anybody can. Not everyone can get into the office, and all our USB ports are disabled. So there are all these measures put in place to make sure that all the measures are done at our end to assure our clients that we are as compliant as we can. And plus we've got our professional indemnity cover of 2 million and cyber insurance cover of 1 million,
which is fantastic. And of course, not all outsourcing companies have all these protections and procedures and awards in place. I think it's time in the last 15 minutes, before we wrap up, Aaron, would you just talk us quickly through some of the outsourcing models and options available at Global Emphasis?
Yeah, I think the most common we get two types of clients. Client A are the ones who understand outsourcing. They have tried elsewhere and it hasn't worked for them, and they have come to us because they have heard about us, and plus we have recently won an award as well, so that helps us to give more credibility to our service, and we've been there for 20 years now.
Outsourcing Company of the Year.
Yeah, so we won the award at the 2020 annual conference last year. So we are an award-winning outsourcing company, and more important is we have got a UK-based office. So we've got about 10 staff in our Harrow office, and if you're not comfortable with something or the way your account is being managed from our team, then we come to you. We can or have a Zoom call with you from the you will also have a UK account manager to look after you. So it's not like we have a chat and then you deal straight with India. You'll have a point of contact in the UK as well, because we understand the cultural difference. So we are the step in. So one of the most common things is that people who have already tried outsourcing, it's easier for them because they will see a significant difference in the quality of the product they get from us versus what they're used to. And then you've got clients who are very skeptical about the whole thing because they say, oh, am I going to lose control? I don't know how it's going to work. And I don't know about the quality. Or should I send my work to India? And there are a whole loads of questions. And the single answer to that is the proof is in the pudding. You have to try it out, suck and see how things go for you. And which is why we probably the only ones who offer initially a pay-as-you-go service, which is you do not have any minimum commitment to the volume you do. Try out the service first. We always work on a fixed cost basis because you have got a fixed cost arrangement with your client unless there is additional services offered. You've got a fixed price contract with your client, and obviously you would expect a fixed price contract from us. So at the beginning of every job, we will quote you for the job, whether it's compliance, whether it's bookkeeping, and once you give us the go ahead to go with it, then we will finish the work, deliver the job back to you, and obviously we've got a very stringent feedback mechanism where each job we send you a feedback form, and we constantly striving to improve the level of service we are offering and the quality of the product we are offering. And feedback is very important for you. Once you've gone through the pay-as-you-go model, once you're comfortable and once you know for sure that we are the right people to go with, then you commit to volumes. Because I always tell all my clients that if you're going to send ad hoc job, stopgap arrangement, I'm not sure it's not for you. It's not going to work longer term. You need to treat it as part of the team. And as I've mentioned before, it doesn't really matter where you're based, so long the work gets done. So I can go through some of the options. So pay-as-you-go is the first start. So start a few jobs with us, see how it goes, see the feedback, talk to the managers in India, talk to our managers in the UK, and then go to a few other options we have, which so the most common inquiries we are getting and signups we are having recently, including existing clients, is something called a shared outsource solutions, which is effectively a dedicated staffing model. In nutshell, what it involves is rather than recruiting your own staff here and training them, we hire, we recruit, and we train the staff as per your specific requirements at our offices in Mumbai. And then that person will report directly to you or to your manager or however we structure it. Which means that some of the concerns firms of accountants have, like, you lose control on the work we are doing, all that is sort of eliminated. So it's a bit of a hybrid between outsourcing and offshoring. Where the recruitment, the training, and the providing the person and the computers and all the peripherals for the office is provided by us, and you are the ones allocating the job. So that person can even have your email addresses personalized, but that person is working purely for you. And that model is working quite well with a lot of our firms. And I think in the last 3 months, we've already got about 10 SOSs signed off, and I've got another 15 odd in the pipeline. But obviously, there's a lead time with this. So hence, to start with, you go with the pay-as-you-go model, see how it works for you, and then jump onto a SOS model. What we also have is something called refer your bookkeeping clients, which what I'm finding is a lot of firms are very reluctant to take on bigger bookkeeping assignments, which effectively means running their accounts function for your end client, because they are simply not geared to do that kind of work, or they simply don't have the resource to do it. So what we have come up with is refer your bookkeeping client, because we do have a team here in the UK who can engage with your end clients with your permission, of course, if you want. And you would recommend these clients to us. So we will engage with that client and provide them a holistic package in terms of running their accounts function, which is the purchase ledger, sales ledger, management reporting, and all the stuff. Either you white label it and add a bit for you to provide the more high-end advisory services, or we have a strict engagement directly with your end client. And at the end of the year, we will provide you the complete year-end file at no additional cost to you. So we make our money on bookkeeping, and you make all your money on the year-end.
That sounds wonderful. I like that. We've had the other very common question in from somebody else listening to the webinar who wants to know, does outsourcing work in any way for the traditional paper bag job?
So long you've got somebody who can put those paper into a digital format, it can be done. But that person need not be a high-end resource. It could be an admin person, and you need a decent scanner in your offices to be able to scan. If it's an ad hoc one-off exercise and just to test it out, I can always help out from I've got a very small team in Harrow, but we normally don't take on scanning jobs. But just to kickstart the process, if you want an odd job to be scanned, we are happy to do it. But in the longer run, it makes sense for you to have a good scanner, which a lot of people do have a good scanner in their offices, and an admin staff who can scan all the documents, put it on the portal or put it on your server, and we do the processing.
And I think the concept of the traditional paper bag job, I know that they still exist.
Probably for another year, isn't it?
But once they become VAT registered, once their turnover exceeds the VAT registration threshold, then now there is an obligation to maintain all records in an acceptable digital format. You have to encourage those clients or educate those clients. They're going to need to adopt one of the options we referenced before. If they want to pay you to put their paper bags information online, fine. If they don't, then maybe you need to help them use software that enables them to scan in, or for the automated recognition of their bank feeds, their invoices, their receipts, for everything to be done using the cloud bookkeeping software that is so widely available now. There's so many options available. Yet the traditional paper bag job is going to die out. I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm not necessarily saying during this financial year, but over the next 2 to 3 years, the concept of the traditional paper bag job will disappear as accountants educate their clients to make better use of the really simple facilities that exist for online cloud bookkeeping. I know there are some clients for whom it's not possible or not feasible because they don't have broadband connections, leaving them to one side. But they can still be educated or recognize they're going to have to pay more because they're not able to make use of the time-saving facilities that are around and available for everybody else.
I think for the paper bag jobs, you could use MTD as a tool to say that, look, you need to get paperless. And if you still insist on paper bag jobs, then I think they should pay a premium price. Yeah. I think there should be a differential pricing system in place.
I wholly agree. We've got 5 minutes left on the webinar now. So just before we wrap up, Aaron, do you want to just take us through how things work?
Yeah, I think if anybody who's interested in outsourcing, it will be an initial discussion. So you can contact us, and one of our account managers can engage and have the initial discussion. The phase 2 will be starting with a trial job, and then we would definitely need feedback on the trial we have done. And then the whole outsourcing function begins. So I would just suggest that you do about 2 to 3 jobs on a pay-as-you-go basis before you commit to a longer-term commitment, and look at other options available. And then at the end of the exercise, we always insist on building a relationship with you, and that's where the UK account managers and India account managers are required to engage with our clients to see how the service is going and how we can improve on it, and how we can provide a better service to you, because we are not perfect. We do mistakes, and over a period of time, we want to improve the level of service we are providing, and we bespoke the service to your specific needs.
I think it's wonderful, and I find it fascinating. A number of outsourcers have approached me over the years, and nobody ever talks as passionately about this level of communication and the testing and trial, and also the emphasis on quality to quite the in quite the way that you and your staff do, Aaron.
I think it's a people's business, isn't it? India, the people buy from people. It's a relationship business, and with due respect, a lot of the outsourcing companies don't understand that they cannot run a function purely sitting in India or wherever they are. We need to have that people element to the whole thing, and this is where we come in with the UK setup.
And one of the other things that I like, I know one of the accountants I worked with before I got involved with Global Emphasis had tried outsourcing with another, very reputable large outsourcing company, but felt they couldn't cope with the processes and procedures that large company had in place, because in effect, they felt as a smaller accountancy practice that everything was set up to deal with the biggest firms. And I know that whilst you're ISO 9001 and 27001 certified, your processes and systems are better suited to a wide range of firms.
Yeah, definitely. And this is where our UK team gets involved to understand what bespoking we need to do with your. I'm sure a lot of things will be, and because of our knowledge in the sector for so long, we can also share the best practices in the industry and say, do you know what? Instead of this, you're better off doing this way. And as I said, so long you get the quality product back from us, which you spend very little time here, maybe a few hours to finish it off and send out. And I think the less time you spend in the UK, the more profitable that job is going to be for you.
Oh, I think that makes perfect sense. Well, we're coming up to the end. We promised that we'd finish by 12, so we will. Let's just finish off with a few tips to succeed with outsourcing. Aaron has said openly and honestly, it's not a silver bullet. You can't just wave a magic wand and expect your paper bag job to be sorted and turned into a beautiful set of accounts or tax returns. You can't expect everything to work without any effort or investment of time and effort on your part. But the initial discussion process, the trial jobs, the feedback facility that Global Emphasis offer you here does mean that investment you need to make in the relationship is significantly less than if you are looking to recruit or use a third party of any other type.
Yeah. And also accept the change. It's a different way to the way you've been used to working, but that's how the market is moving at the moment. And unfortunately, if you're not prepared to put that investment or bringing a change in the way you're working, then outsourcing is not for you.
Absolutely. Whoever you're working with, your UK account manager, your Indian account manager, the shared outsourcing resource in India, you're going to treat them like a new member of staff. There'll be a learning curve there too.
We normally say about 3 months you need to allow to bed down the relationship.
Which is, in some respects, is the same as recruiting somebody over here, except that you don't have any of the other recruitment hassle and issues, which just seems quite magical to me too. You want to make sure you give feedback on every single job. Global Emphasis request that even on the jobs that have gone really well. Go in slowly, then scale up, and clearly choose a company with a long track history of working successfully with accountants in the UK. And Global Emphasis in 2019 are celebrating their 20th year here. That's quite astonishing in itself. So in summary, we know MTD is having major implications on how accountants are resourcing their practices. The quality of your clients' record keeping is now so much more important if they are within the MTD regime. And of course, MTD is not going anywhere. Yes, we all know that there is the facility to use a sticking plaster for those clients who don't want to use cloud bookkeeping system. But that is only a short-term solution in most cases. If you're looking to retire or sell your practice in the short term, maybe that's suitable for you, and outsourcing is not a long-term solution because you're not looking at a long-term plan for your firm. But if you are, you need to be in control of your firm's workflow and workload. Invest in technology to improve efficiency and consider selectively outsourcing to reduce your resourcing headache. So we have one final poll question for you, which is the obvious one. To what extent do you want global emphasis to no, that was the question we asked just now. So let's do it properly and ask the right final question. Would you like to be contacted to hear more about outsourcing and how it works? This isn't obligating you to doing anything or going forward with anybody. It's just identifying those people to whom with whom Global Emphasis will have a conversation in the near future. And it's lovely seeing so many of you saying, yes, you would like to be contacted. Those who don't want to be contacted, clearly Global Emphasis won't get in touch with you. Those who do, they'll get in touch with you. Of course, you can get in touch with Global Emphasis as well. And just before we go, we will stay online if anybody has any further questions that they want to ask either Aaron or myself. When you exit the webinar, you will get a quick pop-up survey about the webinar. And in any event, whatever you think, we hope that we'll see you at Accountex next week. I'm speaking at 1 o'clock on Wednesday in the Accounting in Practice Theatre. And I'm also chairing a panel for Global Emphasis at 4 o'clock on Thursday, the 2nd of May, in the Business and Finance Theatre. And that panel discussion will include a number of accountants who have outsourced and who've experienced outsourcing and who are considering outsourcing. And we'll be answering the question, is outsourcing the future? Worth just mentioning that. And then moving quickly on, we're Global Emphasis, of course, we're on stand 860. So even if you can't come to the, to hear either my talk or the Global Emphasis panel discussion, we do hope that you'll take the opportunity to visit the team from Global Emphasis on stand 860 at Accountex next week. Otherwise, if you want more information, you're welcome to contact Global Emphasis. You've got the phone number there. We can go to the website. But we thank you very much for joining us today.
Or you can also meet us at Accountex, because I'm sure there'll be some of our existing clients there. And at the panel discussions, we got some of our clients talk. We're going to discuss. Don't talk to us. Talk to our clients.
Oh, fantastic! Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for being with us today on the webinar, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.